Okay, so this is for the control systems people. So one thing I've heard from a lot of you guys when you're writing all your tasks for your drivers is that you don't know how to write tasks that receive data from the mission control interface if the mission control interface is not done yet. So what I've done is created a test simulation environment that will allow you to actually create your own commands that you can then receive onto your ESP32 microcontrollers. So just a little recap, the way that we receive commands from mission control is via XHRs or XML HTTP requests. So those are the commands from mission control, and you can also send a response from an XHR back to the mission control page. So let's say I said update drive mode from mission control. If you updated the drive mode successfully, then you could send back a response saying okay, or if not, you'd say bad. The other type of communication between the two sides is SSEs or server sent events, but we're not going to worry about that for the sake of this video because my simulation thing only is regarding XHRs. So I'm going to show you an example of a task that I wrote that receives a command from mission control. It does a calculation on the control system side on my microcontroller, and then it sends the result back to mission control. The example here is calculator. There's two main types of parameters. The first one is operation, which is a string. It's going to be add or subtract. And then the subsequent variables are just all integers, which are used in whatever operation we say specifically. The other things we need to know about this configuration is what is the IP address of the ESP32 microcontroller we're sending data to, and then what is the specific endpoint. Endpoints are defined inside of the control systems code, and depending on what endpoint it is, it'll call a specific function and then pass all the parameters that we send over up there. So I will first show you the code that I wrote. It's actually an extension on the Wi-Fi test, a little blurry, Wi-Fi test component folder or project folder. I built my own, and it's just specifically for calculator. So I'll give a quick run through and then I'll show you how it actually works. So we have a endpoint right here that I showed earlier called -calculator, and it'll respond on a post request, which is a type of XHR command. And this is really rudimentary. It's honestly, it grabs the variables from this request arguments object. It parses it, and then it looks for the operation type. And then based on the operation, then it'll either add to the result variable if it's an addition operation, or if it's subtraction, it does some data manipulation and then it subtracts from the values. And then after that, what we do is I convert it from an integer into a string. And then I use the request object, which is passed through for an XHR with our environment. And then I just pass it back the result string. So that's really all the code right here. You can just take a look at the Wi-Fi test module. It already sets up the Wi-Fi server and everything you need for the IP address. And then I'll come over to the mission control interface, which is the thing that I designed today. So this is what it looks like if you're not familiar with what we have here. And you can just follow the README on the mission control repo and then get this downloaded. But basically, once you have that running, you can actually just click the module select dropdown and then select XHR test module. It'll look blank like this, and then this on the left is all filled out. So we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to close that. And then I'll show you what we have here. So there's a few input boxes. Trying to make that more focused. There you go. The first one is ESP IP address, and there's also a port number at the very end. I'll show you how to get the IP address in a second, but port number is actually defined in the code at the very top. So you can see right here, async web server and then 80. So that's the port number we're going to be going to. And then the endpoint is calculator, and that corresponds right here to our server.on command, which is at the beginning of that calculator code that I showed you. So that will route whatever data we pass in to the specific function that we wrote in our control systems code. So that's that right there. Then down here we have data. Data is a key value pair combination where you have the opportunity to specify if it is an integer or a string. This will decide how that data is packaged and then sent over. It makes it easier for you to interpret once you're on your control system side. So what I have right now is operation, subtract. We'll do addition first actually, but both work. Value 1 is just 3 and then descending from there. And then that's all. So once we have our ESP32 all set up, we can actually hit send XHR right in the bottom right here, or we can add more if we wanted more variables. And then it'll send it to the ESP. So I'm gonna get my ESP set up. I believe it might already be, nope. Okay, so I already have it flashed for sure. So I'm just gonna do make monitor, and that's gonna run all that code. And then you'll see right here, to follow back on me telling you this is how you get your IP address. So you'll see right there, my IP address is 192.168.4.1. And then you'll see that will correspond up here to the IP address in the input box. So right now, my thing is all ready to go. It's just waiting for some sort of command. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and send that over. Click send. And oops, it looks like, okay, I cut the last clip short because I did not flash the correct version of the code. It was an old version. So now, same configuration right here. We're gonna be able to click send. And then as you can see, it had a log command for sending to the ESP, and then it had the resulting value right here. And then I'm going to change this to subtract just to show you this working dynamically. So I can click that, and then it'll do 3 minus 2 minus 1. Or actually, yeah. And then it'll be 0. So yeah, feel free to clone Mission Control 2019, and then jump down to XHR test, fill out all the fields, and mess around with it. Let me know if you have any questions.